And it's Ken Kraetzer for Cam Vets Media. We have a great chance today to meet with the new Army basketball coach, the women's coach. That is Katelyn Kuester. She comes from St. Joseph's University, and her dad coached in the NBA. Coach, good to meet you. Welcome to West Point.
Yeah, thanks, Ken. So happy to be here. Just ecstatic, to talk about more things West Point, and yeah, just excited to be here to say the least.
Well, tell us a little bit about um, what attracted you to West Point, and what have you learned about West Point and women's basketball so far?
Yeah, absolutely. So coming from St. Joe's, being there the last 11 years of my career, enjoyed every single second. I think if you asked me a little over a month ago if I were planning on leaving St. Joe's anytime soon, I probably would have said no. Obviously, that changed very quickly within my first conversation about West Point, dating all the way back to the conversation with the search firm, and just talking about the camaraderie of West Point, the way that you feel when you step onto post, the people that you meet, the conversations that you have, the unity that you feel. And that's a conversation with the search firm that, obviously they know West Point, they know me, but they're really just the middleman. But to be able to feel that sense of camaraderie through that call, and then, moving through the progression of the process, up to stepping on post for the first time, and how amazing that was. It's been a dream come true ever since. Again, I go back to a lot of quotes that I've heard about West Point. A couple of things that stick out to me. One is West Point is undefeated. And I feel that in my soul. I feel myself clenching my fists when I tell recruits about that on the phone. And also that it's a place that you can feel. And it's very, very true. And it's reigned true since the day that I accepted the job at the end of May.
Well, it is, and it's a very special place. We were just at graduation, and so another 1,002 second lieutenants commissioned into the U.S. Army. They're going to do great things, and led by a woman. First Captain Caroline Robinson did a great job this year. Tell us a little bit about your career playing as a guard at St. Joe's, a very competitive basketball school. I cover Iona also, and they always had some very competitive games in the Big Five in Philadelphia. Tell us about your St. Joseph's playing experience.
Yeah, you know what? I don't get that question enough anymore, Ken. So I'm happy that you asked that. Unbelievable 4-year career at St. Joe's. I had some of the best teammates, best coaches that I'm still super close with to this day. And it goes back a lot to me when I think about those 4 years are the relationships. And obviously, growing up in my household with my dad being a coach, I fell in love with coaching, but also being around those coaches at St. Joe's specifically is where I really fell in love with the process and having a very clear vision of what I wanted to be, who I wanted to be. And a lot of that was because of the coaches I got to be surrounded with. And we won a lot of games. I mean, I think we won 20 plus games the back 2 years of my career. We made postseason the last 3 years. And you remember those moments, you remember the wins against Villanova and Princeton in double overtime and all those things. But you really remember just the moments in between, the bus rides, the practices. It's the culture that we created there was something that was so special, and that's why I loved playing there. That's why I love coaching there, and that's what I look to continue to recreate, especially here at West Point.
Hey, and you coached at some great places as an assistant at University of North Carolina, starting out Lehigh, Loyola, Maryland, and then back to St. Joe's. Tell us about some of the stops on your coaching trail.
Yeah, absolutely. So Lehigh was my first stop after St. Joe's, after I played. And I got to work for legendary Sue Troyan, who's one of the longest tenured coaches in the Patriot League. And she just really took me under her wing. And especially because, I had only grown up with Cindy Griffin, as my head coach. I had been recruited by her when I was 14, and she's really all I ever knew. So going into that environment was just unbelievable for my growth. And then being able to get a master's degree from an institution like Lehigh is something I say so proudly. And that was probably about a year I was there for. I realized how special the Patriot League is, the type of student athlete that you get to recruit there is unbelievable, and how much they care about the academic side of the student athlete piece. And I knew it was something that I wanted to be around in my future. And I don't just say that because I'm conveniently back there now. I really feel it. And then after that, I got to have an opportunity at UNC Chapel Hill. Actually, at the time, our head coach, Sylvia Hatchell, had just gotten diagnosed with leukemia.
Uh,
So it ended up, yeah, it was a really tough time, but she had to step aside. So we all actually got elevated for that year. So I was put in a role at a very young age, with a team that had the #1 recruiting class coming in that freshman class. And we actually ended up making it all the way to the Elite Eight. We were 2 possessions away from making it to the Final Four, at Stanford. We ended up losing. So that was hard, but just such an unbelievable experience on that stage. And then the next year, I got to go to Loyola, Maryland. So back in the Patriot League, which I loved. I got to work for a guy named Joe Logan, another very long tenured Patriot League coach, and learned a lot from him. I was able to recruit and scout and be on the court and do all those things. And then I got a call a year later from Coach Griffin at St. Joe's, and she said, do you want to come back and be my director of ops? Technically, on paper, that would be a step backwards, because I was an assistant at Loyola, and then to go and be a director of ops, but it was a no-brainer for me. St. Joe's was always home. It was a place that I always dreamt of being able to rejoin the staff at some point. And a lot of people question that, because something that Coach Griffin prides herself on is staff retention. And we had a staff there that had been there for 15 plus years. And a lot of people said, listen, you're going to go there, but you're not going to move up. And I didn't care. I wanted to go back there and be with the people I knew that would help me grow and learn. And, fortunately for me, 2 assistants stepped away because they were raising a family 3 years in, and I got my opportunity and kind of never looked back. And, basketball is a karma sport. I say that all the time. It really is. Good things happen to the people that do the right thing day in, day out. And luckily, it kind of fell into my lap that I was able to be elevated at St. Joe's, and now get the opportunity at West Point.
yeah, it's great. Now, maybe you tell us a little bit of what your philosophy of basketball is. I've been around some coaches that were emphasizing 3-point shooting, and I did spend some time with Rick Pitino, and everything was about defense.
Yeah.
And so, what would you say your philosophy is that you'll bring to the team at West Point?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, it's our culture. We're going to be the most spirited team that any team plays against. We're going to win warm-ups. That's how we're going to approach every single game. And then, we're obviously going to handle our 40 minutes, but we're going to be the most connected, most spirited team that you're going to watch. When you watch our team, you're going to say, wow, they will really love who they represent, what they represent, and they love each other. Second of all, basketball wise, we're going to play really fast. I want us to be able to score fast when we can. Obviously, we're going to be able to run offense at an efficient clip in the half court, but we have very versatile, athletic, fast players on our team. So we're going to use that to our advantage. And defensively, we're going to be super gritty and tough. Flying around the floor, diving on the floor for loose balls, all the 50-50 balls. And we're going to be the group that's sprinting over to help each teammate up, once their face hits the floor and jumps on a loose ball. So, I go back to the culture, how it's going to look, is huge for us, and how our culture is going to be. And it's going to lead to a lot of success and a lot of wins just because of how we operate.
Well, that's terrific. Uh, Tell us about some of the players that are returning. They'll be on your roster next year, and how you'll be starting to work with them over the summer.
Yeah, absolutely. You look at this roster, it's built for success. I'm pinching myself every day. I've been able to watch a ton of film within the last week or so, just throughout, trying to assemble a staff, obviously, and now being able to dive into the basketball side of things. Returning 4 of 5 starters is unbelievable. Super impactful players that were returning as well, along with a lot of other players that got some key experience last season. You're talking about a team that won 20 plus games, beat Navy twice, made it to the Patriot League championship team. Obviously, Trinity graduating is a hole that we're going to fill, but I firmly believe we have what it takes, obviously, to be a really well operating machine early on, just with who we have coming back, and super excited about that. In terms of what we're allowed to do with them in the summer, hopefully come July, we'll be able to have workouts with them, and obviously they'll be able to do their strength and conditioning. The incoming plebes will be involved. There's our day coming up on June 30th, and then they go into their beast week. So we don't have as much time with the incoming plebes, but as for the returners, come July 6th or 7th, we'll be able to start workouts with them, and get them in the weight room.
That's right. Our day starts all over again.
Yep.
And that is a special day to watch these young Americans raise their right hand, take the oath, and start their training as West Point cadets.
Oh.
And hey, let's say I got to ask you about managing time. We always ask the
Mhm.
players how they learn to manage time because the demands of military training at West Point, the high level of academics, and then playing Division I sports, basketball. In your case, how do you approach that? How have you been successful with that in the past at St. Joseph's, some of the other colleges you've been at?
Yeah, I think it's important, and it reigns true with West Point, to just be super disciplined in your plan of attack every single day. I'm a big checklist person. I like to feel some sort of accomplishment when I go to sleep at night, knowing that I at least attacked, whatever my plan was for that day. And just being very intentional with the time that you allot with whatever you're doing, and being very present in what you're doing. Um, for us at St. Joe's, player development and our relationships with our players was huge. And I think with West Point, you have to be super creative with your time and how to build that culture and build that foundation of a true, authentic relationship with those kids. That takes time, right? Everything takes time. But as long as you're intentional with whatever you're doing throughout your day and your plan, it's going to build success. So, you got to be smart. You got to be disciplined. And you got to go to bed knowing you did something that makes you a little bit better that day.
That's for sure. And tell us a little bit about your family. You mentioned your dad was an NBA coach, and you had some exciting news in your personal life. You mentioned just recently.
Yeah. So my mom and dad live in North Carolina. I have a brother as well who's a very successful realtor here in Philadelphia. Hopefully he can get my house on the market here within the next 2 weeks or so. I told him I'll give him a good percentage. Um, but yeah, so super close with my family. It's just the four of us. My dad obviously was an NBA coach, so we had to move around a lot.
Mm.
At one point, my dad, worked for Larry Brown in Philadelphia, and he then got an assistant job at Detroit, and my mom kind of made the decision to raise our family here in Philadelphia because we were both going into high school at great high schools. So I was able to watch them, work through a long distance marriage for a lot of my life, which was amazing to watch how important a partnership is within coaching, and to have someone behind you that's super strong and confident in what they're doing as well. But yeah, growing up around the game was amazing. He won an NBA championship with the Pistons, which was really cool when I was younger. And then, he was able to move back to Philadelphia for a little bit during the latter end of my college career, which was great to have him at some games. And we're just super close. I talk to him probably 2 to 3 times a day, just always picking his brain about basketball. And then my mom, has no basketball background, but she's the smartest woman I've ever met in my life. She went to UNC and was a dental hygienist and never really used her degree. She was just a coach's wife, but so much more than that. And then, yeah, I have an amazing partner. Her name's Sydney Canessa. We just got engaged last month. So excited for us to start our lives together at West Point. And she's my rock, and the voice in my head with every decision that I make. So she's just a great, steady, calming presence, for my family to have around too.
Well, congratulations on that news. And hey, just got to ask you, college basketball, college athletics has changed now so much in the
Mhm,
last 5 years or so since COVID with the transfer portal, the NIL,
mhm.
and then another, big announcement from on a court ruling just last week. How do you see it? It's a little different, as Coach Munkin says, everything's different at an academy.
Yeah.
You don't have NIL because the cadets can't take a part-time job.
Mhm.
Um, and the transfer portal, it ends after you set foot in class for junior year. How do you see the change happening in college basketball? Where do you see it going?
Yeah, I think the most difficult piece, and we it kind of experienced it at St. Joe's, losing a couple of our players, only two though, which is still not a lot in the grand scheme of things. The biggest thing that's going to shift are the cultures. It's going to be really difficult to build a true, authentic culture when you have 7 to 9 new kids in your roster every single year. So I think the teams that are able to only have 2 to 3 departures, even though if you date that back 10 years ago, you're like, whoa, what's happening to that program? Why are they losing kids? Whereas now, that's just the new norm. So those teams that are able to keep those departures low, I think are the teams that not only are going to have the best culture, but you're also going to see a lot of earlier success within their season, because it's going to take those teams that have 7 to 8 new faces much later in the season to gel. Now, sometimes that's an advantage, right? They say just play your best basketball in March. But I genuinely believe it takes the whole body of work, from September, October, November on, all the way through March. That's going to build a championship team. And that's what is so attractive about, West Point. Just knowing, especially on the women's basketball side, that there is going to be consistent retention across the board. Because, aside from basketball, having a degree from West Point and the life that you have for yourself, the most elite network that you will ever be involved in for the rest of your life, that is worth any NIL check that you could possibly get at any other institution.
Well, it certainly is an amazing place. We enjoy and are proud to cover West Point athletics and so many of the events. We say we take a lot of pride in being at a lot of classes our day and then being at their graduation and commissioning day. And so, really welcome. We're looking forward to seeing you up at West Point and meeting you in person. And just really best wishes on your start as the head coach of Army women's basketball. Good to see you.
Thanks so much, Ken. Appreciate it. Go Army.
Beat Navy.
That's
And
right.
that is Katie Kuester, who is the new head coach of Army women's basketball, the 10th head coach at West Point. Great to talk with her. And this is Ken Kraetzer for Cam Vets Media. We cover cadets, midshipmen, the military, and veterans proudly since 2008. Thanks for watching. Okay, Eric.